hypothesism, hyperreality. Right, these concepts are actually not really any more difficult than what you might call just straight up utility or deon, but the words are different, and the way these arguments are discussed are different, and the way to get familiar with that is to read. Alright, so the first thing you need to do when you're answering a critique is not to be scared, not to get caught up in using fancy French and German authors. A lot of times, K debaters are able to win just by the mere shock value of reading a K. Reading an argument that comes both ideologically and in retrospective from left field and people don't know what's actually happening.
So take the sentence exit. In short, it should be understood as the completion of the perennial Occidental project that is and, however, unevenly in any historically specific movement, always has been simultaneously and indissolubly an imperial political practice, an imperial practice of thinking, as such, a polyvalent praxis, in other words, the end of which is the enframement, colonization, and reduction of the differential human mind, as well as the differential human community to disposable reserve. Now, can anyone tell me what I just said? Good, because I don't know what I just said. And that is what often happens in critical rounds. People just say a lot of big words to confuse you. They end up winning because you take them way too seriously. You should literally ask them in cross-examination, which is what we're going to get to on the next slide, to explain the criticism in ways that allow you to understand it. Oftentimes, they don't know what they're saying themselves.
Right, so somebody's running a critique with concepts that you're not sure about, and they explain it in kind of a complicated way. Like, the average part of the oppressive structure that all has to do with capitalism and sexism, and they all work together, and you're not really sure what's going on. You should ask them to explain it in simple terms. And they probably won't be able to, because they probably will not understand it well enough, because they're just using big words to confuse you. And then they're going to get up to CX and try to explain it, and be stuttering over themselves, and not really be coherent, and they're going to fool themselves, and it's going to give you the perceptual edge, because the K is going to look stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so you should ask them to explain it in simple terms, because the fact is, a lot of these words that critical authors and critical debaters like to use are really just synonyms for much more simple words and really complicated ways of expressing really simple concepts. For example, Foucault uses this really great word, governmentality, that he explains in lots of really long, convoluted sentences to really just mean government telling people how to live their lives. Something like that, right? You should ask people what their terms mean and what their arguments actually mean in simple terms.
Hold on. Just going off that, one of my favorite phrases to use in debate whenever I was asking people about confusing positions was, explain it to me like you would to a 6-year-old. Because most 6-year-olds don't know what epistemology means, right? So if you force them to explain it to you, either they will be able to, in which case you will beat the criticism, or they won't, in which case the judge thinks the critique looks stupid.
So the second step is setting up the specific strategic measures and arguments that you're going to use to answer the critique, right? You should always make the argument, no matter what, if you're hitting a complicated K, that if the judge doesn't understand the argument, they shouldn't vote on it. And the reason for that is, first, the judge probably doesn't understand that argument. So if you win this argument, it's a good reason for the judge not to vote on it. And in addition, if the judge doesn't understand the argument, they probably don't want to vote for it either, right? K debater who gets up and uses lots of really fancy terms and is really bad at explaining it, is not going to be able to convince the judge what their argument means, is going to try and win on like technicalities. But you can tell the judge, no, don't buy that, right? Here's your way out. If you have no idea what's going on, then you don't know what the K debater could possibly do with other debating, because you don't know what their arguments even are in the first place. Judges love to say, I don't know what is going on in this round. I don't know what the K means. I don't know what these fancy words mean. These sentences are too long, convoluted. These people are bad writers. I'm not going to vote on it. And you should also try to make their arguments work for you, right? If they're being really confusing, you should make sure the judges know that and use that as a reason for your arguments, right? If you're answering the K in very simple, understandable terms, and your opponent isn't, then that should be a reason the judge should prefer your argumentation, because it's actually something the judge without severe intervention.
Yeah. Reinterpreting their arguments in favor of your arguments is a really good strategy, especially when they're being really confusing, because oftentimes you can use that confusing rhetoric as a justification for why the judge should prefer your arguments or your interpretation. A, because they're more understandable, and B, because if they never understood what the critical debater was saying in the first place, then there's no reason why you aren't right about your interpretations.
Alright, so now we come to the core of this idea, which is addressing the structure of the K. And so, first, we want to talk about the alternative, because that's often the weakest part of the K. And the first thing worth mentioning is what to do if the K doesn't have an alt. If the K does not have an alternative, the first and by far the most important argument we should make is that the K is non-unique because it has no alternative. Does anyone know what it means for K to generate uniqueness through the alt? Lonnie, raising it?
Sort of, kind of.
Okay, what do you think it is?
Well, so without the alternative, like the criticism would just be like explaining how like these link, how they link into the impact, but they wouldn't be providing a solvency for why they fixed the impact in the first place. So the alternative generally functions like that, making it unique.
Right, so solvency functions differently in the context of a K because critiques try to link specific actions as part of a broader trend of some sort of structural violence or oppression or whatever it is that they're criticizing. Critiques have something called a residual link, which means that the alternative or whatever that happens in round doesn't solve every instance of like a harmful pattern they're identifying, right? So if they say you did something that was sexist, well, you're not the only person in the world who's ever done something that's sexist. It's part of a large trend. And in order for the K to matter at all, that is, in order for it to stop anything, or in order for it to stop any impact, because lots of other people are causing similar impacts, then they need to show why they, specifically in this round, are able to solve something, right? They need a solvent alternative that demonstrates why, in the example of sexism, the judge voting against you will be part of a project of fighting sexism. If they don't have an alternative, and they don't show why they solve, then the impacts will just continue. Because lots of other instances cause those impacts to happen. Which means a K absolutely needs an alt if it is to make any sense at all. So if the K does not have an alt, it should stand up and say, this K has no alt. It doesn't make any sense. And that might be sufficient. You could just sit down right there, and that would get rid of the K, because it's non-unique, right? There's no reason for the judge to vote on the K if voting on the K will do zero things to solve this huge problem they've identified.
Yeah, and I guess a unique thing about
Let's say I'm running a spin path, and someone runs a K on my, I'm saying woman instead of woman with a Y, and the impact of the K is that it turns K's and causes more chaos and supremacy. They don't mean all day though, because it's that, like, that was the wrong thing. Yeah, it wouldn't be fun.
I think you need an alt. I think you
Because
do
you're not the only
otherwise,
person to say woman,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Woman with an A, I said it right there. I caused the problem. That's the K is true.
It also makes it so that you solve for the problem, right? Otherwise, it's just a linear disadvantage.
Right, and the reason why a regular disad doesn't have to have a counterplan at the end of it is because it's taking the action of the app that causes the harm, right? If you're like,
Only because of the affirmative, right?
Then
Not
stay-
because of residual.
right, it's because there are no residual links. In the status quo, the disad is not happening, right? If it were happening, it would be non-unique. The uniqueness section serves that for a function of the disad. In the K, the alt serves that function. So now we're going to move on to addressing the substance of an alternative. So a lot of time, the alternatives that critique debaters use are very rhetorically oriented with lots of flourishes and again, long Latin words that do not give actual policy options, which means that permutations often allow you to take advantage of their criticism and actually come out ahead. Sometimes you generate offense based on the alt. So you should make sure that you know what in general the alternative means. If they don't have an alt text, make them write one, because it's just like a plan or a counterplan. They need a text, because if they're defending a specific advocacy, they need to show exactly what that advocacy is.
Remember to make them write one, because too many critical debaters will change what their advocacy means in the next speech to delink you from arguing. If you don't make them write Okay, so you don't, okay,
Oh, I know what it is.
oh,
Oh.
so an alternative can be unconditional, which means you will always defend it no matter what. It can be conditional, which means that you have the option to kick it or not go for it regardless of the responses they make. Or it can be dispositional, which means that you will set up a condition under which you can and cannot kick the alternative.
The most common condition under which you can kick an alternative or a counterplan, it's both the same thing, if someone says dispositional, is usually if the debater answering the argument wins the permutation. But if someone says that the alt or counterplan is dispositional, you should always ask them what the condition is, because dispositional is not itself. It's very ill-defined, right? It says, sometimes, so you don't know what times.
Why would you make them write an alt if you could tell the judge that because they don't have an alternative, just forget about the thing?
Well, because they don't, it's not that they don't have an alt, they don't have a concrete alt, you know what they're doing, right? They'll use a bunch of fancy rhetoric and they'll talk about random things and they'll be like, this solves. But you want to be like, exactly what do you do that solves? So make them write a specific alternative from their more general, like mysterious alt that you don't really know what it is, right?
Right, is that if it has no alt at all, that should be a big argument, but if it just has a really vague alt, then you should make them write it out. Like, for example, I hit a K once for which the alt was like, let's be Zapatistas. And I spent a lot of time in CX trying to get them to clarify, like, what on earth does it mean to be a Zapatista? Can you tell me what I'm going to do? What does it actually mean to do the alt? And that's a strategy you want to take. Does anyone do come first, or?
Yeah, let's do them.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to give you a bunch of examples of permutations you can make against the K.
You guys all know what permutations are. Anybody doesn't? Raise your hand. Okay, so,
Yeah, so a permutation is, technical term for it is a test of competition. Do you know what it means for a counterplan to be competitive? Okay, right, so it just tests whether you can do both the app and the neg counterplan at the same time. So you can test that for a K-alt too, right? If they say, instead of engaging in like your performance or whatever it is they're criticizing or discourse, we should do the alt. Well, you should always question, do we really have to reject me or vote me down in order to embrace the criticism? So the answer is sometimes no. There is one K, or there's one term that you guys should almost always make.
you guys should like memorize this permutation.
You should memorize it, or better yet, write it down. Like have it in a block so you can just read it, because it gets rid of basically all critiques that are like poorly structured or maybe written a little bit hastily, and a lot of the really good ones as well. And this is called the perm double bind. It goes like this. Right? You make the permutation, do the alternative in every other circumstance except this one. This puts the K in a double bind, because either A, the alternative is really, really good at solving the problem they identified, in which case, because there's so many residual links, so many other circumstances where the same link that they say I did, lots of other people do, lots of other governments do, then this one instance will not cause a really bad impact, because rejecting whatever they say is bad in every other circumstance will solve this too. Question?
So what is the difference between the articulation of plan, perm do the plan, and then alt in all other instances versus perm do the plan, then the alt?
Because you would do the alt in the territory or the field of the plan, like in the round or something like that, if you shift it based on time, right? And if you say do it in every other instance except this one,
Means that occurs simultaneously.
yeah, it means that it occurs simultaneously and also not in whatever space they've identified as the issue in the round.
So it's like saying do both, but in different words.
It takes advantage of how critiques talk about like large issues and trends within society. So it says, do this alternative, embrace this criticism outside of the round, like do it everywhere else, but not here. As opposed to saying, do both of them at different times here. Is that clear?
That's clear.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Wait, wouldn't that term like require you to at least do some kind of like impact way? Because if the impacts off like the AC that you're reading are still less than the impact that the alternative would solve for,
So
then would it not matter?
we'll get to the not very good at solving, right? It's just like kind of, maybe it tackles the problem a little bit, but not very well. In which case, it's not going to solve the problem anyway. It's not good to begin with. So the critique is not unique to begin with, and there's no offense off of it. So does someone want to try summarizing that argument back to me? How about Grant? Summarize the term double line argument.
Either the permutation or either the K also says that it solves residual loops, or K also doesn't work, which means we're doing the opposite doesn't work.
Exactly. So in answer to actually you don't get a question.
Yeah. So Nolan, what was your question again?
It was that even if you make that for no bias, wouldn't you still have to win that the impact coming off your AC outweigh the impacts that link directly to your link?
Sure. So this is the reason why 99% of the time the app or whoever is being criticized when with that debate is because your argument is that the app is just one small residual link that the alternative would solve regardless of if it happened or not. So the impact, if there is any to decay, is minute or gone, which means the app impact will always outweigh.
Right, but the term double line argument can also just function on its own because it says there's no way decay could ever solve just this one impact of rep. There's no way that decay solves the exact right amount of impact that the judge would have to vote on.
So you're using this as an argument because it shows in your case that the case is not going to be.
Yeah, it either shows, it shows that either we can do decay in the app or decay in whatever, or that decay just continues.
But it shows either the solvency is not unique, right, you can do it in other circumstances, or the harms are not unique, because you can solve it. Do you have the terms, or I can have one here? Okay, cool, I have all here. So the next one is just straight up perm do both. Sometimes you can say do the app and the alt, right? Sometimes counterclaims are not competitive. Sometimes K alts aren't either. You should be aware of this because if you can make this argument, it basically deals with the K in one fell swoop. Right, this also sometimes arises due to the presence of residual links, the non-uniqueness that we mentioned before, which is that the K is talking about like a broad structure in society. So sometimes you can do the app, some sort of a policy option within the mindset or within the ideas of the critique, and also do the alternative. Sometimes it's also literally like their actions just don't defeat each other. Like there was a critique that was run a couple years ago for which the alternative was turn the ballot into art. And nobody ever made the argument, but they definitely should have. The permutation, vote for the app, and also turn the ballot into art. Right? Judges used to like draw pictures or like write poems on the ballot. Like, there's no reason you can't do that. And also vote for the app. You should be looking out for things like that. Third one is perm, graffiti the ballot. This permutation says that the judge will affirm. By the way, I'm assuming that the negative is running a K, just for ease. The judge will affirm the resolution, but they will write a political statement or make a political statement on their ballot saying, I agree with this criticism that, blah, 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 we have to fight this sort of oppression, and here's how we can do it. The reason this critique works, or the reason this perm works, is that a lot of Ks ask for some sort of political action or ethical participation in some sort of a social project, right? They say the judge should be an active participant in the project of fighting sexism, fighting racism, fighting oppressive governments. And if that's the case, then it's not necessarily true that only the judge's act of like voting for one debater or another actually solves these problems, because the judge can still participate in a political project through their own expressions, their own voice, and that can come from writing other stuff on the ballot. Right? That is making an expression of their own will and their own role in society. So they can solve most, if not all, criticisms that people have just that way. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. The fourth perm, this is a personal favorite of mine, is perm, do the plan on Friday after 5 p.m. Does anybody know why that is true? Or why that might be a good permutation to make? What's special about Friday after 5? Yeah?
Because it might not work at that specific time, it's just but it'll work at different times.
So it's not the plan will work at that time, it's that the harms of the critique are less likely to happen at that time, and that's because studies show nobody watches the news on Fridays after 5 p.m. And so if you do the plan on Friday after 5, nobody's going to know about it. And if the K has a lot of impacts that are about like populist resistance or harms that something causes to people's will or a political project, if you do the says, in public, we do the K, right? So you say perm, all the public, and do the plan in private. So in public, we say, we're going to embrace criticism, right? We are going to fight biopower wherever we see it. And that's the rhetoric that we use in public discourse and discussion, while we really just go and do the plan and do the app in secret without telling anybody. This is another similar argument that just says they're really not competitive, right? The K is about some sort of political action, and we can have that political action while still doing the actual concrete idea of the plan. This takes advantage of the idea that the K is usually about ideology and the way we frame our ideas, while the app is usually about some sort of concrete action saying we should go out and do X thing in the real world. The sixth one, you want to do the line firm?
Yeah, and so the public-private term is very similar to the line permutation. So just a quick example, I think it's kind of hard to explain. Say the negative Brennan alternative of like consulting with indigenous groups or something about some action because it's key to stopping colonialism. The line permutation says, do the affirmative in secret, but then talk to the indigenous group and pretend like their opinions have some worth. Because either A, they agree, in which case you did the plan anyway and there is no opportunity cost, or B, they don't agree, in which case you can weigh the app advantages against the harms of the Oh, the forget permutation. It says, do the app and the neg, but forget you did the neg while you're doing the app. So if the criticism is because you're actively doing something that you're triggering the link, well, if you forget you're doing the criticism or you forget you're doing the affirmative, then you don't link it to one or the other. So you get to do both, but you don't know you're doing one. Yeah?
So, the fact that you forget you're doing the K while you're doing that.
Yeah. Or you, I think the way I read it was I forgot I was doing the plan while I was doing the K, so the plan passed, but the K was still being done. And I didn't know. Well, and you didn't.
The eighth perm is the mindset perm. Do the app while thinking about the K. This, again, takes advantage of the idea that the app is about a concrete action of like actually going out into the world and like touching things and doing things, while the K is about how we think and frame our ideas. So simply it states that we can solve a lot of problems with K even while doing the app policy, because the K is criticizing the discourse or the framing or performance. So we can do the policy of the app that would require the judge writing I affirm on the ballot while thinking about how we ought to frame our performance and our ideas just as the K wants us to do, right? So the government can try and implement, can try and build a new prison, for example, while thinking about how raw power is bad and how that should inform their discussions. So that would be a way of saying, do the app with the mindset of the K.
It's like do the app while critically interrogating it at the same time. That made sense.
Yeah. So the thing about K-firms is that really anything you can think of goes. The trick of K-firms is just being either really creative or finding some really crazy policy backfiles and just looking at what are different possible ways you can do the app and name. Graham nodded when I said policy backfiles. That's funny.
That really excited me.
So any crazy idea you think you might have about how the K might not be fully competitive with doing the app somehow, go for it. Because a predication really only takes 5 to 10 seconds to make, and they can be good arguments that can deal with the K straight up, and so this is a good time to get crazy and get creative.
Any way you think you can do the app and the neg, you just say it. There's nothing wrong with saying it. Basically say it. Yeah?
So what are some good answers to like multiple perm bad theory?
So I think the clearest answer to multiple perm bad theory is that that theoretical objection assumes that permutations are advocacies.
Yeah.
But they
They're
say,
just a test of competition. Do you know what that means?
yeah, so like, right, what you should be very clear when you're making permutations is these are tests of competition. Right? These are ways in which I demonstrate that doing the K and doing the app are not mutually exclusive, or I guess are not competitive. And that theoretical objection just usually says like, oh, well, how I know what to link offense to if there are multiple perms. But the problem is, the perm is not something you link offense to because it's not an advocacy. It's a test of competition. So it just is a way of thinking about like what the KL actually means. And that would answer pretty much every argument in that shell.
Yeah.
So there's been like 6, or well, probably like somewhere between 3 and 6 different permutations. I have one simple question. So why doesn't reject the affirmative in every instance of their type of like whatever K terminology you want to use, like solve back for all these permutations?
Wait, reject the app in every instance? Or
Yeah, so like
reject
we should
the
reject
app?
every instance of sexism, every instance of racism. Why do these permutations
Sure,
solve?
because as we said, like the double bind term, right? It's either the alternative is so strong that things like the affirmative would be able to be solved by it, right? Or the alternative sucks and we shouldn't do it anyway, right? Because if the alternative is as good as you say it is, then me doing one little affirmative action will not cause the impacts to happen. Otherwise, the alternative is not strong enough to solve for what it's criticizing, in which case there's no point to doing the alternative because the harm will happen. Yeah?
Just like to touch off of what he said. So in that case, how do you generate like a net benefit to the perm or like uniqueness to the permutation? Because it seems like any like risk of a link would just be like another disadd to the permutation.
Wait.
So the argument in the permutation is that you solve your own link. Right?
Yeah, you solve the link, right?
Is that doing the app and the K would solve the link. And then the net benefit can either be something about either the app advantages or sometimes you could argue like performatively doing the app and the K at the same time would be a good thing. That just depends on the circumstances and what the specific arguments are. I think we've got to move on for the sake of time. So before we talk about different types of other responses, there's one distinction we want to highlight for you in how you respond to Ks, and that is when you hit a K, you have two choices in terms of responses. You can either go farther to the right, this is your right, or farther to the left. That means you either respond to the K by saying, no, the K goes too far, it's too radical, and it's not going to actually do good things for society. Or you go to the left and say, actually, the K is really bad because it doesn't go far enough, and it prevents real change in society. So we're going to talk about lots of other responses to Ks in terms of whether they go farther to the right or farther to the left. Yeah, so
Seeding the political is an argument you should make against criticisms a lot of the time if they're moving left. So seeding the political means the criticism does not take advantage of the state or pass some sort of policy, which means that it goes way too far away from the people that can actually make decisions that can solve for the criticism. The argument is when you go too far left, then people in charge of the state will pass policies and do things that your criticism says are bad. So not taking advantage of the state or doing something too radical inevitably just causes the harm you talk about because you don't take advantage of the state apparatus. The impacts of the argument are either A, it's non-unique to the harm, or B, if it's potentially a good enough argument, it also turns into criticism.
So, just to see, does that argument go farther to the left or farther to the right? You say something?
Is that another right?
To the right,
Yeah.
yeah.
It says you should use.
Okay, so just like any other argument, you can impact her, okay, right?
Depending on the impact.
Depending on
What
the
if you
impact, yeah. If the impact is like, this causes genocide, please don't impact her in that. Don't do it, please. But if it's like, this contributes to capitalism, and capitalism is bad, you can win the K just by getting up and be like, what are you talking about? Capitalism is awesome. Capitalism is the best thing ever. America. And you can win the K just like that.
Obviously, yeah. So if it doesn't seem offensive, you can impact her to K, in which case you just win because you're like, yeah, I do create more capitalism, but that's really good.
Right, and this is a really good way to generate offense on a K, right? If someone runs a K and a lot of other stuff in their NC that you don't want to deal with and you want to collapse the K, you can just impact her in 4 minutes in your 1AR, and that can be a very good strategy. Another part you have to answer, of course, is the links. So you should answer the links whenever you're hitting a K. If you're going farther to the right, you should say, I don't link, right? Whatever I did does not actually cause or does not participate in the bad trend they identified in the critique. If you're going for and this is the case because the links that K debaters read are often usually not specific to the resolution, not specific to the app, and generally not specific to your specific plan or advocacy or however you frame things. They just kind of say, oh look, the state does things bad sometimes, and that causes a bunch of really awful stuff. So you need to be very specific. Pin them down in CX to exactly what links to the K and what will cause the impacts to happen. And if you think the app is not what does that, you can no link the argument. This is much like making an I meet on a theory shell or no blinking a disad. It's very, very strong defense, and depending on your judge, that might be all you need to keep back to K. Now, if you're going farther left, you can actually argue that they link harder than you do, and that they link into their own system. This is something that doesn't always happen, but it's something you should be aware of. Because sometimes, for example, if a debater would be running like the women K that Graham was talking about earlier, right, it uses somewhere in that K, women spelled with E and not a Y, then they would link into it. And you can make an argument that once the debater running the K links into it, that's even worse than what you did, because they at least knew that what they were doing was bad because they're running the K, which means that while you were like a little bit hapless, not having heard the K before, and your behavior could be fixed, they're being disingenuous and are harming their own project by undermining it by doing the very things they criticize. When I learned Kritiks, the part that always gave me the most trouble when people would focus on answering it was the framework. Can anyone tell me how the K framework differs from any other framework? Tell me about Graham. Come on.
Are you talking about how it like operates pre-fiat?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Basically, yeah. Could you
Do you
explain that?
want me to explain it?
Yeah.
So it operates pre-fiat, and like how K's usually do that is they link their impacts to like either a roll of the ballot argument, roll of the judge argument, or like how we should function in the debate based on judgments.
Okay, so what Aman said is that K impacts function on a pre-fiat level. And this means that they talk about something that actually really happens in the round and is not part of the hypothetical world where we're doing that. And they link this into the role of the ballot or the role of the judge or something that we as participants in this round in the debate space should do. Do you want to talk about this answer, Brandon?
Sure. So the first way that I found most effective was reading a counter roll of the ballot. So whenever I read a more util app, if I hit a person reading a K, not only would I spend time reading terms and link terms, things like that, I would also read a counter roll of the ballot that said something like the role of the ballot is to vote for the debater that best engages in political action that involves the state. Then reasons you prefer that, right? It becomes then a debate of the method you use to engage in the resolution, in which case you can generate few levels of offense and weigh that against their role of the ballot. So it takes away the unique layer that they tried to introduce into the round because you co-opt it and you can make it your own. The second thing you do is you can read a criticism of their role of the ballot, why it's a bad thing or why it collapses in on itself. It's kind of similar to the first one. So very convoluted thing I'm supposed to tell you. One bid round I had, a person had a roll of the ballot that was like, the role of the ballot is to vote for the debater that best solves child abuse. And I read a turn that was like, that kind of logic justifies abusing more children. Don't ask the warrants behind it, it's very complicated. But there was a turn on why their project collapsed in on itself and caused the harms they were talking about. So you can read turns to the role of the ballot that also kind of function as offense for you. Those are two ways I know. You can also, if you have an ethical framework, many people forget they have an app. You can use the ethical framework in the affirmative to kind of filter what impacts matter in terms of the role of the ballot. So you should never go like, well, they read a role of the ballot, good game, it's done. You should be like, well, there's an ethical framework that can kind of filter or I can use to weigh impacts back to the role of the ballot.
Right, is that K's need ethical frameworks like any other case, right? Because they're just making an argument and impacts. So we need to know how to evaluate those impacts. A lot of K's forget about this and don't put anything ethical in there. So if that's the case, then you should explain how the app framework might sometimes exclude K impacts. Like, if you're reading a util framework and the impact of the K is like social control and violating people's wills, you're like, wait, why is that bad? What bad thing does that cause? The government tells me to pay my taxes. Is that a bad thing? Is everything the government tells people to do necessarily bad? And you can press them on that. If they don't have not only a pre-fiat framework, but some sort of evaluative, normative framework that tells you how to think about impacts.
Alright, so I'm going to show you a really interesting criticism, and Michael will tear it apart, and you guys can ask questions. never, ever, ever type in critique online and then find a critique and read it, because most of the time they're just terrible, okay?
You can do that if you're researching critiques, because you point to the authors, but they will all be done wrong and horribly and terribly, and they'll be awful takes.
So, let's go through this.
Okay. The affirmative is passing a plan. This plan must go through Congress, as Congress is the law-making body of our nation. By passing this plan through Congress, they perpetuate our government. This violates anarchy. Okay, well already there they already looked at the okay by saying this violates anarchy, because that presumes that anarchy is some sort of a rule or set of normative ideas to be followed. And the whole point of anarchy is that there are no rules and you can do whatever they want. So if they tell you this violates this idea called anarchy, that means they're already linking into their own case. They've already lost ground right there because they're undermining their own project. But let's keep going. A, liberty factor. I don't know what that means. Liberty is intrinsically linked to anarchy, lest or too can. Anarchy means no rule in the sense of no imposed control by the state. In the sense there are anarchic poles where the state does not interfere with voluntary activity, but only full anarchy is anarchy. Through minarchy or minimal statism, which is the opposite of anarchy, might come quite close. In state people or in society people interact without imposing costs on each other, that is where liberty exists. No one can rule. Anarchy is thus linked to interpersonal liberty. To the extent that we have liberty, we approach anarchy. To the extent that we lack liberty, we approach totalitarianism. So,
Can anyone tell us what the word is that features under this list? Oh wait, there was no word. It was just a bunch of assertions.
it says this is true. Anarchy on one end, totalitarianism on the other. Right, and it says you move like back and forth along the spectrum. It's not really a warrant why that's necessarily the case, but the next card just absolutely ruins that idea. Can you scroll down a little bit? Philosopher Hannah Arendt shows that totalitarianism destroys human dignity in her text, The Origins of Totalitarianism. Her statement is as follows. It is necessary for totalitarianism to destroy every trace of what we commonly call human dignity, for our respect for dignity implies the recognition of my fellow men or our fellow nations as subjects. But totalitarian ideologies therefore aim not the transformation of the outside world, revolution, not the transformation of society, but the transformation of human nature itself. So, Hannah Arendt was like she survived the Holocaust. She wrote a lot of philosophy later in life. So like basically she was like my own Jewish grandmother. And she wants to tear down the state, right guys? No.
Did anyone see the link why using Congress means we're a totalitarian state?
Right, like they say
I didn't see that.
they say this spectrum exists. The more liberty you have, the closer you move towards anarchy, the more control you have, the closer you move towards totalitarianism. But what about literally 99% of the space in here, right? That card presumes that it doesn't exist. And the fact that Arendt, who was in favor of like a liberal state and a restrained state, is being quoted to be like, yeah, the state's bad, let's get rid of all of it, demonstrates very well that they're kind of missing the point of how government works and that there's more types of states than just anarchy, where there's no state at all, and living under Stalin. In fact, they go well to say, yeah, if you don't have absolute liberty, then we're going to end up living under Stalin. That's not true.
Oh, this is the best argument.
All right, actually, I haven't read this part before. So, Nobel laureate economist Milton Friedman conclusively expresses the negative position in Free to Choose as follows. The system links all problems and external influences beyond its control and takes credit for any and all favorable occurrences. It thereby continues to commit that the private economy is unstable, while its behavior continues to document the reality that the government today is a major source of economic instability. Fun fact about Milton Friedman is that he was a big proponent of something called monetary policy, which is something that the government does, and it means having a Federal Reserve that does things like interfere in the market by adjusting interest rates and telling banks how much they can loan out to other people. But apparently now, he's completely against the state because he just kind of likes freedom in general. Right? This highlights the same distinction that I drew very messily on the board about anarchy, totalitarianism. What about everything else in the middle? Right?
This critique is a huge false dilemma. It says you're either a totalitarian regime or you're an anarchy. Can anyone tell us why that's wrong? You just have to point at the board. It doesn't really require you.
Anarchism, George Woodcock answered the question of whether or not anarchism can provide a better economy than statism. His statement is as follows. The injustices and current economic crises of capitalism proceed not from overproduction, but good job of telling us what those impacts matter. Okay, the mass murder factor, as if it's like a transcription factor, a little piece of the DNA. Objectivist philosopher Ayn Rand distinctly drives home the negative argument by showing that all status systems are qualitatively the same. They all lead to mass murder. Here is Rand. She's right here in front of us right now. A status system based on the government's unlimited power, which means that the rule of brute force differences among status systems only a matter of time to breathe physical the same under status and government not policemen or legalized criminal, that holds the power to use physical force in any manner for all purposes pleased against legally disarmed defensive victims, that can ever justify some monstrous evil in theory, that can justify the horror, the brutality, the fun, the destruction, starvation, slave labor camps, torture chambers, wholesale slaughter, and status dictatorships. Wait, what? How did we get from having a state to dictatorships, slave labor camps?
Did anyone read the first line? Can anyone tell me why the first line of this piece of evidence is so damning for this critique? Please, someone, Nolan, please.
It specifically talks about why it's reliant on the rule of brute force and unlimited power of the government.
Unlimited
Unlimited.
power!
Unlimited. You mean we have to be all the way over here in order for these bad things to happen? The government has to have infinite power over society.
It's not just passing a plan through Congress? Oh, man.
Wait, the links don't trigger the impacts? Oh my goodness, what a weird idea. Then, this may sound extreme enough to me, you're saying to yourself, this kid's insane. Yeah.
This guy was really preempting arguments.
Let me explain that more now. 300 or so years down the road, our government will be a dictatorship as the president and federal government gain more and more power. The only way to stop these things is to stop our current state of government now.
Can anyone tell me why the app would outweigh? Grant, you can control. Tell me why you would outweigh.
Time frame?
Oh, time frame. Tell the class what time frame is.
How fast the impact happens?
So if you read an app that says the impact happens in a year, if this happens in 300 years, seems like the app is a more pressing concern.
So before we look down your crystal ball that this cave data magically has, let's examine the little semblance of a warrant here. The clause, as the president and the federal government gain more and more power. Are there any links to that argument anywhere in the cave? Does passing a plan through Congress mean the government has more power? Does Congress pass things like all the time? Maybe not as much as they used to, but they do, that's their job. They legislate. And here's another question. Does Congress passing something necessarily mean that they give themselves more power? The answer to that is 100% no. A lot of what Congress does is passing things that limit their power. For example, Congress passed, this is not a very good example, but the 26th Amendment that actually limited their pay and limited their compensation. So they limited the scope of what they could do. Or a better example might be the Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison, where the court ruled that they did not have jurisdiction over several classes of cases, but by doing so, and therefore got rid of some of their power. Right? The legislature can do that too. They can make rules for themselves and say, we can't do that sort of thing. So now let's look at the crystal ball and look at the resolutional alternative. It is the conviction of the negative team that instead of perpetuating our statist government, we should reform and proceed with an anarchist society. Okay, if you ever hear reform and anarchist society in the same sentence, you know something is wrong already.
They already lost. Well, they lost a lot of times before this.
But they just lost it again. Right? They're telling you to reform into anarchy. How do you reform? How do you reform yourself out of having a state? When reform means small changes through political action. Does anybody have an answer? An idea? Because that's what we'll talk about.
Yeah, if you actually have an answer, I'd love to hear it. That was a quick thing.
Alright, so now instead of reforming ourselves out of the state, we're going to reform ourselves out of this cult. This has been shown to be a more acceptable society as it provides for greater liberty and a more stable economy while eliminating the possibility of mass murder of the populace that has been shown to be a direct result of a statist government.
Okay, so someone give us a turd, just based off the way this alt is worded, a turd in the critique. Why would an anarchy not solve for some of these things?
Think about Hobbes, if you're confused.
Please, someone raise your hand, please. Kevin C., tell me a turd.
Anarchy probably. Okay, anarchy in the way that they conceive of it is probably terrible because they're whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, so if everyone could do whatever they want and there are no rules, how do you stop mass murder? Oh, so we kill more people when we engage. That sounds like a turd.
And actually, even Ayn Rand, who they quote and is like the most anti-state legitimate philosopher ever, actually, she's not a legitimate state recognized author ever, still thinks we should have a state prevent people from killing each other, right? That's what radical libertarians and objectivists believe the function of the state is, to like keep us from just walking around everywhere with machine guns and just shooting people. That's probably not a very good goal to live in. All right, E is the voting issue, not the framework, the voting issue. By passing the affirmative plan, our statist system of government is continued. This is arbitrary for two reasons as shown above. Wait, what? Why do you turn arbitrariness all of a sudden? The first is liberty. If you value liberty and dignity, you must reject the affirmative plan. Even if the liberty statement falls, wow, that's some really highfalutin rhetoric there, you must reject the affirmative plan because anarchy fights for a greater economy than the statist system. This is especially pivotal as we are in a recession. So the better economy that's going to happen 300 years from where the totalitarian government is going to solve the recession. Guys, this recession is so bad it's going to last for 300 years. That's what they're saying there. Our despicable statist government caused our recession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was only the government to cause the recession.
It was Obama taking all your money and then just hiding it, like in a vault somewhere under the White House. That's what happened to the economy.
Because he's a totalitarian, and that's what he does.
He wasn't elected or anything. He kind of just walked into the White House and was like, hey, can I come in? And they were like, sure, you can be the president now. Because that's how our system works. A negative ballot is necessitated for these reasons.
Now this is obviously an extreme example, but a lot of Ks, believe it or not, say similar things with more confusing rhetoric that we think are really smart. Just think about it. How many of you guys have debated a confusing critical position? How many of you guys didn't know what it said? It probably said something as dumb as this, okay?
Well, if we all manifest our epistemologies right now into our ontological metaphysical position, we can stop the capitalist feminism from happening in a Nazi future where totalitarian Hitlers will become cyborgs.
Like that's literally what Kritiks say is like, this is actually pretty typical, just with different words. So don't be afraid of the decay, right? Tackle it head on. Look for every single weakness. Choose a direction. Either go farther to the right, be like, wait, this cave does a bunch of really awful things. Or go farther to the left and say, hey, wait, this cave actually prevents real change. But in conclusion, I just want to say, Kritiks seems scary, right? They use lots of big words, and the accusations sometimes seem personal. Their authors are French or German, and things are getting really crazy. Sometimes mentally unstable, like Foucault intentionally gave himself HIV. Make no sense. Like, conjunction of the system is extreme alternative, like two sides of a curved mirror. A vicious curvature of a local space that is henceforth magnetized, circularized, reversibilized from the right to left, a torsion that is like the evil spirit of commutation, the whole system, the infinity of capital, folded back on its own surface. Transfinite? That's from Jean Baudrillard's Civil Afferent Simulation. Sometimes they're Nazis, like Heidegger or Schmidt. And even implicated with terrorism, like Antonio Negri, who assassinated the Prime Minister of Italy. That's a real thing. He shot the Prime Minister of Italy, and he's also chaotic. There's just one thing about most critiques, though. They suck, right? We've taught you about how to answer them, not just how to scrape by, but to attack every single possible weakness the critique has, to beat them down, and make sure that that you know critiques function the same way as every other argument, and you can respond to them the same way as every other argument. But you have the advantage, because the way most debaters run critiques just uses a bunch of fancy rhetoric to try and pass off a really bad argument. So the most important thing is not to be taken by surprise when you hit a K. Right? A lot of wins K debaters get just come from the shock value of reading sentences like the one I just did. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I probably won a round or two just on the shock value of reading that sentence. Don't let that throw you. Instead, be a shark. Smell the blood in the water. Answer the argument. Realize that basically all critiques really are this bad. And all you have to do is be looking for the places they mess up and the places that are weak. Go straight for the alt, right? Does the alt really solve? Is the alt a good idea? Can I affirm it? Go straight for the framework. Make lots of arguments against it, right? Do we really care about the impacts? How do we evaluate the role of the ballot? Go straight for the link. Do I really link? Do they link harder? And go straight for the impacts. Wait, is that a bad thing? Will that really happen because of me? Or maybe the impact is good? Turn it. You can do so many different things to answer a critique, right? You can answer all four sections with really easily and in a really dominant way. And that will make sure that, hopefully, you guys never lose the critique again. Does anyone have questions?
No questions. You guys are all K masters now, is what you're telling me.
You guys are never going to lose to K's again.
Okay,
Yeah.
no.
What if the case is really good?
Well, then you have to make really good responses. Right? Yeah, a lot of K's are bad, right? some good critical debaters that are not as bad as this. But that just means you have to make good arguments. Wow, a real debate will actually happen then.
Right? If you're not scared, you can approach it like any other argument. I think the thing about critiques is that if someone is running a critique that's actually good, they probably will have been running it for a while. Because taser, because they're so limited, take a lot of practice to get good at when you're running them, which means that if there's a critique out there that's actually good, you'll know about it like months in advance. And if you're worried about hitting it, you can prepare lots of responses. Like, do your own research.
So no questions? Yeah. Implementable policy alternative? Well, then it's a really good critique. Or it's a really bad critique because it links into itself. Right? If they criticize any aspect of the state and then make the state do something, right? Well, that seems to be a problem, right? If you read an argument that's like the state is inherently racist and will always be racist and hate black people, then you say the state should destroy itself. Well,
That's suspect.
I mean, is the state actually going to destroy itself because you told it it was racist? I don't think so, right? These are just problems with critiques you can point out. But there are some really good cases, right, that have policy alts. But if they have policy alts, right, and you're reading a policy app, and it's like a plan versus counterplan debate.
Like, that's all it becomes. It all is just a counterplan. And you debate on it. You can confirm it, you can compare net benefits to it, you can say it has a solvency deficit, anything like that. As long as you don't get scared of it. Right, any other questions?
Just a quick thing. Remember, I'm assuming you're the negatives reading decay. Remember you read an affirmative for a reason. Don't be scared of using your affirmative against decay. I've seen too many debaters spend 4 minutes on decay and then forget they had an app. You spent 6 minutes reading and defending something. You should use it. It's your tool.
So, can you give an example of like the framing level, like coming into the 2AC, of how to frame the app against the critique?
Can you say that again?
So going into
Like
2AC,
basically the framework for the.
1AR and LD, you don't have a 2AC.
Oh well, the one like the 1AR. My bad, the 1AR.
How would you like leverage the app against the game?
Sure. So, well, one round I was reading a policy grant, and the negative team ready to change about how we had to embrace the dark cosmos. I don't know what that means.
You don't even know what dark
I
matter is.
don't know what that means, right? And they were like, thinking about death causes us to hate life. So I was like, well, we can not all die at once, right? We can stop extinction, which is a good thing, right? Because then we can contemplate about life and make it better, right? So I use the 1AC to say it has a potential for solving the impact of the criticism because it allows us to think about our life in more meaningful ways in the long run. Kind of makes sense? Or if they read an argument about how it like hurts liberty or something, then you could leverage util-based impacts off your app against it and just do language with it, right? Really depends on the impact coming from the criticism.
And if you know that you're going into a round or a tournament where you like to 2 months, you can set up your app to deal with it, right? You can think about, here's an argument I'm going to hit, and you can work something that will function as a preempt to that argument into your app. For example, if you think you're going to be likely to hit a biopower critique in the next argument, you can link something in, or you can work something into your app about how democracy is good for the government's power, and it turns biopower or government power into something really good, right? You could do that as a framing justification, like power is bad except when it's democratic. But that's also a really common and really good answer to a biopower critique. So if someone gets up and reads like 7 minutes of biopower in the NC, suddenly you've got a really good answer that they probably conceded